Hello, I'm Marc Henderson from Laramide Resources. We're a uranium development company with late-stage assets in Australia, the United States, and now in the country of Kazakhstan, where we'll be doing our first phase exploration in the coming months.
Mark, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too. Yeah.
You're over here, WNA. I'm saying it sounds like the same intro to every interview I do. We're at the WNA symposium. I'm told so far, very reliably, by many people, quite busy and full of the right people compared to last year.
Oh, I don't know. There's always many of the right people here. There's a very good buzz this year, though.
Right.
Noticeably different, more positive buzz. I think certainly on the floor, and
Yeah.
more interesting participants potentially, because you got this whole new class of folks that are involved in this SMR build-out that everybody's hearing about,
Yeah.
and that everybody is, in the stock markets is jazzed about, and certainly that's, the some of the stocks that are the best participants in the overall market, the Constellations and the folks like that. It's all because of they're tied to this dynamic that the world's figured out we need a lot more electricity all of a sudden, particularly in the West, that hadn't had any real growth in electricity demand in a long time. And nuclear becomes sort of the default obvious solution.
Right, and obviously the tech guys are driving that. Absolutely, seem to be. They're certainly making all the headlines, and people are hoping it's the catalyst to come, but also, more importantly, the money that will kind of flow through the sector as well. Do you believe that will be true?
Oh, no, 100%. I mean, certainly their ability to move fast and hopefully not break things, but move fast and put capital to work. And they, as far as an influence maker and in terms of a generation that really maybe had some resistance to nuclear and that stuff, that's cut through all that, which is fantastic, because this industry for the longest time, you come to these kind of conferences and they were all a bit nervous about all the opposition that had historically been around the nuclear sector. And I think really a lot of that now has, for the most part, dissipated.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's a shame to kind of call them old timers, but there's an older mentality which is, well, that's the way we've always done it, and that's the way we're always going to do it. And yes, we come up against opposition for sure, so we kind of got to factor that in. And there's a certain pace at which things move, and a certain, it's like depressed optimism about when things will happen. The tech guys move at a different speed, not just because they got a ton of money to throw at the problem, but they think about things differently. Do you think they're going to solve the problem of the energy demand?
Well, they're the ones driving this demand, obviously, because of course all the data center thing and AI and everything else. They don't, from what I can tell so far, they really want to support the folks that are in the SMR
Right.
business, if you will. Now, there's a lot of entrants, okay, and so a lot of the stock market entrants, like the Oklos and NuScales and what have you, and there's a lot of them. And Rolls-Royce, which I think is in your country here, that I think is going to be super successful, and they're very, obviously. They're well ahead, and I think they're in line now to get maybe the first one of those visibly line of sight on where it's going to be and when it's going to start, and I think that'll be terrific. But there isn't room for 50 new entrants, and it's sort of like this is how nuclear 1.0 went. There was a lot of different reactor designs, and it'll probably winnow down to 2, 3, 4 of these things that everyone will get behind. And I get the sense that the tech folks and the money behind tech, they're kind of happy to basically be backers. I don't think they want to get into the weeds and do it themselves. I don't think they want to get into the uranium business and the procurement business, and really, they don't want to know about the fuel cycle. It's just, we got to pair a whole bunch of electricity with this demand that we have around AI, and it's part of the capital of the whole thing. And I think they're really looking at the now, and I think governments are starting to look at, don't bring me a whole bunch of data centers without some power solution.
Well, that's the problem. It's they're building all this hardware and there's no software going into it, which is what you guys say. The demand story's there. That's what we're saying. Short way of saying the demand's there. Supply's the problem. Guys like you are part of the equation. You gotta find the stuff. You gotta get it out of the ground economically. You gotta be able to put it into a plant and then into a tin. That bit, not a lot of players looking like they're able to do that at the moment. So a few people maybe stumbling, shall we say, this past 18 months in terms of, certainly in the ISR side. That's not good, not a good look, but no one's fallen over it yet. Will we get there?
Oh, no, I think you'll get, I mean, when Cameco comes out and says mining is hard,
They meant it.
Well, that's sort of
Yeah.
absolves all the people lower down the food chain, if you will. And obviously, ISRs are trickier, typically than a conventional mine, maybe, because it's all it's an underground chemistry set to some degree, and it's hard to work out problems vis-a-vis. You have a throughput problem at an open pit mine, you can kind of solve that problem, or the conveyor belt breaks or something. This happens in traditional mines all the time, where you have outages or you have electricity problems or whatever. So you got a lot of that going on, but I think the pace of new build has been a little bit slower than people were expecting. You don't have a whole lot of new projects. You really don't have a whole lot of new exploration discoveries, really. If you were really looking at the whole sector and saying, where's reserve replacement for this whole industry, you kind of have to scratch your head around that. If you're looking out realistically, if you're looking out, to the end of this century, which is, you're going to turn on a reactor in the next few years, it's going to run till 2100.
Yeah.
So, they do these big fuel reports and they go out to we're going to 2040. Well, that's great. What are we going to do after that? And we're still now, the deficit that everybody's been predicting, it's on us now. And that's before data centers. So SMRs are coming out just along at the right time. But even the first of these SMR deployments is probably realistically 4 or 5 years away.
Yeah.
And none of that, like we're here at this WNA, and this is a fuel year report where this is the authoritative source where they say, okay, here's our vision of what supply and demand looks like, and they're sort of apolitical. They're not really allowed to make a price forecast or anything else. So all the brokerage firms and everything kind of do that for them. But it's pretty clear everything's pretty tight, and we need the demand. Don't worry about the demand. I think people are much more starting to worry about the supply side.
Well, as they should.
Yeah.
Because when that report comes out tomorrow, it's going to be out of date because it doesn't include some of these stumbles, I'm politely calling them, right? And you said something earlier, so it kind of made me smile a little bit in the sense that, it's taking longer than people expected. I think they're taking as long as they normally do, but people's expectations were shorter. People say, oh, it's easy. We'll get this done. Mines will get built, plants will get built, and it takes no time at all. It'll be there when I need it. That's never the case. That's never. I was meant to meet 3 companies here this week who are going to come with specific announcements going, well, actually, we can't meet because we're not ready. It's taking longer than we thought. So I'd say that has always been, or seems to be, since I've been re-involved with the uranium space, this disconnect between the realities of being able to access the pounds when required,
Sure,
and them actually being available, because mines and it's much more complicated than people realize.
Well, I think you got to. It's not an oligopoly industry, but you got 2 huge players that control a very large amount of current supply. Being Kazatomprom and Cameco, and then you have a lot of potential new entrants. And I think, and some of these, like I'm just going to use the Canadian example. Some of these a lot of people, the things that people get excited about are in Canada, where I'm from. But I don't think people realize one of the biggest constraints on a lot of that stuff was the regulatory capacity. So our government in Canada does not have the capacity to get final approval of probably more than 1 or 2 of these things in any given year anyway, because they simply don't have the right. And it's a very highly regulated industry, as it should be. Yeah. And so that's a real constraint on a lot of these mines. You have an extra piece in nuclear that you don't have in, if you're just making gold or something like that. The regulatory process is probably a little more complicated and involves a couple of extra steps.
So when Carney's making an announcement at federal level that we're going to simplify and get rid of red tape and it'll be a 2-year process, don't worry, folks. Is he speaking on behalf? Is he speaking federally, or can he speak on behalf of states, and can he speak on behalf of a uranium industry which says actually we're under a lot more regulation than the regular mine guys? So what's our version?
Well, I don't think. He's very good at PowerPoint and speeches.
He's very good at speeches.
But our challenge. We're talking about. I don't think the nuclear thing in Canada is really top of mind, to be honest, because I think the things that are in train have been in train for a long time, and you've got a whole series of those approvals probably coming up, and everyone's baked those projects into the future supply matrix anyway. I'm talking about things if we were to do more of it.
Yeah.
And the Canadian things, because of the nature of how you find a uranium deposit in Canada, typically tend to be these very large, higher grade lumpy production, if you
Yeah.
will. Like you can't scale it up for 2 million pounds to 4 million pounds. I mean, they typically tend to need to start at a level that,
Yeah.
if the market wasn't this tight, would be disruptive.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's that. But when he's sort of giving broader sweeping statements about we're going to unlock all the regulatory roadblocks and suddenly build ports and
Yeah. Yeah.
pipelines. I mean, no, I would take that with a shaker of
Pinch of
salt.
sodium.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We better get on and talk about the commercial realities of running a public company with you. Like I say, Australia, Kazakhstan, Australia. Should we start with Kazakhstan? Because that was the last thing I think we talked about. I was kind of quite excited about that. Now you're going through a data discovery analysis phase at the moment. How are you getting on?
Well, we took a very large land position there, or an option on a very large land position there, and it allows us to explore for a whole suite of commodities. Basically the entire periodic table if we want,
Right.
including uranium. We were, obviously most interested in the uranium. It's biggest ISR producer in the world. They have these massive roll front deposits.
Yeah.
They were all really originally found by, in the era of the Soviet Union. Kazakhstan became an independent country. They brought in some outside expertise, typically Cameco at the beginning, who knew about ISR, and they basically developed the kind of what they knew about from the get-go, which is probably, let's say, for the sake of big round numbers, let's call it 2 billion pounds they started with. And it's really a production company that has a bunch of JVs and produces uranium and has done very successful. And they really haven't done a whole lot of exploration. So, and I think at some point, because the guidance, transparency, whatever you want to call it, out of Kazakhstan in terms of, what is really the production level. And given that you're the single most important, systemically important, largest producer, it's probably a wider band than people would like, and they probably don't really talk about things like really where are all the future reserves, what's the plans, none of that sort of thing. But it's kind of starting to be assumed that, at some point you might want to crack on with a bit of exploration and things, and they really haven't done a lot of that. So, we saw an opportunity, and we think there's an ability to go in there. Obviously, got a potential to find a lot more on these roll fronts and all and all the rest of it. So, that was kind of the bet, and we'll go in there, and we're going in there very cautiously and understanding that obviously we got to work with the country and ultimately with Kazatomprom if it's to be successful, probably. And let's just see how we go. I mean, it's exciting to go in there and let's see what happens with some exploration success. I mean, most companies that go exploring, they don't particularly necessarily know what the end game's going to be on the whole thing. We had a little bit of inbound on that as far as like, okay, explain what it's going to be. Well, we got to find it first.
Yeah.
So, but the good news is, I mean, you're looking.
It's a big country.
It's elephant country.
It's an elephant country. Yeah, I know a bunch of guys, Western companies, chasing or finding copper, gold, and I'm spent a lot of time there in the oil business as well. So, think for outside interest, it's a good place to do business because it's, as you say, elephant country. There has been Russian exploration, a lot of historic stuff in there, which is a good help, if anything. But for you guys, first mover advantage. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys do from that one. So what can we expect to hear from you in the next few months on that?
So on the copper, because the copper is very interesting too, and I would say a lot of the ground we have is very prospective for copper. So we're trying to figure out what to do with that piece of it. Maybe we'll get a partner in or something on that will be interesting. But it took us a while. We want to do the compilation part of it and understand where we go, because the nature of looking for ISR deposits doesn't lend itself to a lot of the things you do typically in exploration, like geophysics and that kind of thing, where you come up with like sort of pretty slam dunk targets, if you want. And it's ultimately going to be a lot of drilling. So we've identified a bunch of areas that we think are pretty interesting, and where here's indications of historic success, and you could fit a lot of the ISR mines that are up and running now in between, a couple of data points that say this is a roll front, and like, could there be another deposit here? And our indicia of success is, we're not looking for Inkai, we're not looking for 300 million pounds. I mean, we find a Church Rock, we find a 50 million pound deposit, a 30 million pound deposit. It's quite useful, and let's see where we go. So I think in terms of what our expectations would be in terms of success. Like, I'll be disappointed if we don't find something of that scale. And let's see how we go. We've got a reasonable sized program. We think we're going to be able to get 15,000 meters, something like that, starting in the fourth quarter. It's all being lined up now, all the rigs and everything else, be multiple rigs. So there'll be a bunch of data coming out of there. I think people,
Brilliant.
as we get into that, I think people are going to be quite interested to see,
Excellent.
okay, what's coming out of this, because no one's done anything like this in a long time. So.
That's a lot of drilling, a lot of assays coming through, and that's off the back of a lot of work. Okay, desktop primarily, but you can get after that one. Okay, so I'll be looking out for that. I'll just quickly deal with Australia because I think it'll be quick to deal with. Elections happened. Not much else after that, really, was there? You heard, I think there's a lot of positive talks before the elections.
Right.
People thought everyone wants this, bipartisan, it's all good, but is anything moving?
Well, it's a party thing. So the Liberal Party, which is the right of center party in Australia, and they're represented. It's always a two-party, well, plus the Greens, I guess, at the state level. And so the Libs got in Queensland. And we expected that they'd just do the same thing they did the last time they were in, which was a while ago. And they've only been in for 4 years of the last 35. So this was quite a big thing.
Yep.
And we expected there to be something where they just make some kind of a statement, a tweet, something, and then it'd be over, because nothing else has to happen, but they just have to give Uranium the blessing and say, we're good with this now, bring us some permits and what have you. And we're really first mover there, first cab off the rank because of how far along our thing is. And we're just waiting for that. And I think we're still optimistic about that. And there's a dialogue going on. And there's a lot going on now in Australia, in that state, particularly around mining, around the coal, around what Glencore's going to do in Mount Isa, because they're threatening to shut the smelter down.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of ways potentially that you could see this unfolding, but it will just happen quickly. It's not something, it's not a process, it's not anything else. You'll just learn one day this is done. Laramide's allowed to build Westmoreland. And that should be I would hope, a pretty happy day for us, a big market moving event. I mean, we're trading that asset's probably valued by the street at 0.2 NAV or something. And considering it's one of the bigger, better top 10 global uranium mine, ready to go in a market that needs it, I'm guessing it should get revalued pretty dramatically.
So we need to follow the politics and narrative.
And we're working it now. Okay. We're obviously on it. We were hoping it would just be a process that would just kind of unfold. It's taking a little longer.
How do you lobby for that?
Well, I think, any government, they're supposed to represent everybody's interests, and you can go talk to government. I mean, our relationships in the U.S. and stuff now are unbelievable. Like the federal government in the United States and the stuff they've put in place is unprecedented. Like if our government in Canada could learn a lot from this whole thing that we went through with this Fast 41. Like the government there, never mind talking about, well, maybe we'll do this or we'll do that and it's going to be great. They gave us a schedule. Like the brokers and people like that would ask us, can you please give us a Gantt chart about when you're really going to be in production so we have some milestones and news flow and all that. And we were always reluctant because none of this is in our control. It's all permits. Who knows? And we applied and got involved in this Fast 41, and our little industry lobby thing in the United States, the uranium producers, is very effective. And you've probably had some of the folks here on your couch here today. They're part of all that, and the current administration is totally receptive. And they basically gave us our schedule. Said, here's your schedule. Now, will we miss it? I hope we don't miss it, but it's pretty encouraging that a government is telling you this is the schedule on which you're going to get permitted.
That's pretty cool. I kind of wish that would happen in Australia. I kind of wish it would happen in Canada.
It's better in Australia. It's a message to the departments and the people that work. They're supposed to be working for you. That, by the way, the permitting is your job. You're not in the resistance. And let's get some stuff permitted. And here's how long we think it should take. And they're not skipping any. They're not cutting any corners or anything. They're just doing their job.
Okay, so there's the schedule. That's what they're doing for you. What are you doing in terms of staying in control in the U.S.?
We're just getting the permits done. That's a low cost endeavor, but it takes time.
But it seems like everything at the moment is just kind of slowly moving forward as opposed to, I say that Kazakhstan, no, 15,000 meters not. So, but Australia is a waiting game. Is the US a waiting game, or can you actively
I think as we get closer and understand that we're really going to come out of the other end of the funnel in, let's say, 6-8 months, you'll sort of see more indications of activity that would happen when a company is getting much closer to building the first well, because it's the Churchrock's a well field with a relatively small plant that's not a high capex item. The whole capex that we put together was $50 million or something. I mean, let's say it's 100 even.
Yeah.
That's not. Encore raised 100 million last week in a bond offering.
Yeah.
So the market wants to finance this, or maybe you call up Microsoft and okay, well, yeah, can we please make things move faster?
Off brief. Let's remind people exactly what you've got there, what stage it's at, and then what you need to do, and then I'll kind of get into it with you.
Sure. Yeah. So this Church Rock project, it's one of the probably. I mean, outside of Cameco's original stuff, it's probably the biggest known ISR thing in one coherent project under one roof that's permitted by the NRC. So there's 50 million pounds at one location and another 20 at another, some of which we share with Encore, actually, the resource. And it's all permitted federally under an NRC license, which we're now in a license renewal project to get another 10 years or maybe up to 20 years of that status. And it needs one state permit that's basically a re-permitting exercise in the state of New Mexico. Okay. And so that's the last really permit of significance that we'll need to get, and we're working away hard on that now. And we'll file something, I think, we'll file the application and put it into the government. I mean, these permitting things are an iterative process. You make your application. It's like any permitting process of building a building. I mean, you submit your development plans and the other side receives them, and it typically goes back and forth a number of times. There's comments and everything else, public comment usually in these kind of projects, and ultimately you come out the other side of it with a permit. And so it's not very exciting, and there isn't a lot of news flow, but the nature of what we have is very significant, and it's an ISR project that starts at 1 million pounds a year. It scales up naturally to ultimately 3 million pounds a year. We have the license. Under our license with the plant site that we have, which is at this place, Crown Point, which is the two sites are 20 miles plus apart. That scales up. That capacity of that plant is 3 million pounds a year, and it can take material from other places. So we'll be the first party in New Mexico to get certainly a new plant or new uranium production online. Now, other folks are moving now, so the hard rock folks are moving, but they need everybody knows in the United States that you need another hard rock plant besides Energy Fuels. And the other sort of quiet company that no one ever talks about, but that's very significant in the uranium business is General Atomics, and they have this Mount Taylor mine that's been an ex-Chevron mine from the 70s and 80s, big resource. They're going to also ISR. They're proposing to develop this as an ISR project. So that has a lot of buzz now and traction in New Mexico because they're going to go through the process. So the regulators in New Mexico are going to be quite busy all of a sudden with lots of application. A lot of this stuff, again, it's into a capacity thing. If you haven't done a lot of permitting and things like that, you've got to build up the regulatory capacity in order to be able to move projects along. And so some of that probably needs, more resources thrown at it on the government side, to be honest, to get things to move in the pace they probably should move at.
Okay, so it feels like things are ticking along.
Yeah.
But it also feels like you're being kind of quite cautious with the capital as well. You're not kind of burning through a ton of cash at the moment. Is that?
Well, yeah, we don't. I mean, with everything we didn't talk about, I mean, it wasn't that we didn't do anything in Australia. Since I saw you last, we did all the drilling. We compiled it all, put it all out, and we bumped the resource by 20%. I mean, there's 65 million pounds now at Westmoreland.
Yeah.
So we weren't standing still.
Yeah.
And could we go do some drilling just to look at here's some results, but what's the point? I mean, the projects we have are big enough and well understood enough. We just got to build them now. And also we've been reluctant to, because everybody in the business talking to everybody else and
Well,
and they're all trying to ultimately build a bigger production company, because they're all small. All the new stuff that started, let's be real about it, they're all pretty darn small, and that's before they all started missing their numbers. And so we have in our own little portfolio, forget about Kazakhstan, like we have the ability to have 7-8 million pounds annualized. Like, so you can only take on so many silos of activity at one, and these things are, they're quite geographically disparate.
Yeah. But I think that's the point, which sort of leads me to the question of like, can you operate on 3 continents? And how do you finance that? How do you staff that? And in reality, it probably makes more sense to partner, I suspect, when you've got 2 kind of Shovel ready? We'll go with shovel ready. Why not? This is a great phrase. Shovel ready of projects of a certain size, like big enough to be of interest and certainly economic, I imagine. When do you start to move those conversations along? Are you so dependent and beholden to the market doing a few things for you? I would go, the market goes on a run a bit, or do you need to just get on with those conversations now?
Well, I mean, I think some of it is, I think we wouldn't really, particularly with Australia being literally one comment away, and this is what happened in the last time around that we got what we wanted in Queensland. It was a 5-minute news conference and it was over. Unfortunately, it was at the depths of the bear market.
Yeah.
And nobody cared. But even then there was, okay, everybody got a little bit excited that we were allowed to get on with it then. And then the market kind of fell away again. So we're reluctant to transact or do much until we get proper value.
Yeah.
And then we have a line of sight. And obviously, in terms of the reason it can be, we're sort of able to operate at, at a level with all these different projects in different places is they're not at a level where they all require much bigger teams and things like that. Yeah. But if the market revalues the project 2x, 3x, you're going to hire a team. I mean, you can afford the team. And, it starts with permitting. The good thing is we don't really need to do much in the way of any other spending short of the CapEx itself in, say, Westmoreland. The U.S. will have sort of more of a buildup as it gets closer to, okay, it's really happening. But again, we talked about the CapEx earlier. It's not a crazy amount of money. Yeah. But it's possible that some of these things end up, you do more interesting things, JVs or something. All these things are possible. I think if you're really going to build and there hasn't been one done, like a big global uranium company, it's going to be hard to just stay on one continent. It's going to be hard to stay in the, just at the Asia Pacific sphere or in, because you see most of the Aussie listed companies, they're good at Australia and they're good at Africa because all of it kind of works in their time zone and they're comfortable with it. But you don't see those companies venturing too far afield.
Yeah. Well, you do, and it doesn't go well. I think South America, Canada.
Well, it can, but I mean, but also there's no. Let's face it. There's no production in it. I mean, you go through all the production in the world. It's pretty small, and it's in pretty few. It's in pretty few geographic locations and in certain countries. Yeah. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon. Partly because of what we sort of mentioned earlier, which is this regulatory piece. Like a country can't just suddenly decide we want to be in the uranium production business because you've got a whole piece that goes with that. First of all, you got to get buy-in from your own population. Yeah,
we saw that with Peru.
Yes, exactly.
And Argentina to a lesser degree, but nevertheless still there. So yeah, it's essentially in terms of the geographical spread. But I think the real issue for me at the moment as an investor is going, who do I believe can move their project forward and take advantage of this? I hope this cycle moves. I take advantage of this cycle because I've been, and a lot of my inbound is from people going, do you know what? These guys are full of shit. It's just always the same stuff, and we've done nothing in the last 5-6 years. Is now the time? Because I'm guilty of this since 2019. This is the year. Right now feels a little bit different. It feels a little bit different because I think I've seen a different type of money come into the space. And it's needed that. I'm not just talking about the tech guys. I'm talking about other types of money was coming in and allowing companies to advance. But you've got to show that money exactly how this thing's going to move forward. Not the theory of it, but actually move it forward into something which can get into production. Because I'm done with sentiment. I'm done with momentum. I want that kind of fundamental investment play in front of me.
I mean, I think it will happen. I mean, I think you're sort of saying, are we in the 7th or 8th inning? And I don't think we are. And I think it just got re-energized a lot by this data center driven demand, whatever you want to call it. You had a phase where we went through a little phase where the folks who went to production, the early entrants, they've sort of disappointed people a little because they haven't turned into cash flow machines. Yeah. But I mean, all that stuff will continue, and most of those problems in all those companies will get sorted, and there'll be some kind of a delivery there. And I think the real stuff is coming. I mean, if you think about the bigger projects, the Western Canadian projects and all that stuff, and that's still going to happen. So, and obviously nothing fixes all of this like another $20, $30, $40 on the price and the margins. And you see what's happened in gold. And, there were a lot of sleepy companies or companies that even big stodgy companies that no one liked, and then you put $1,000 on the gold price, and Newmont's the second best performing company in the S&P 500 after NVIDIA. And so at some point, some of these uranium companies
Money solves the problem.
could be in that space, you know. And you talk about the numbers they're talking about here when you even ask the utilities, okay, really, what do you know, what's the price going to be? No one has a number south of 100.
Yeah.
Realistically, if any of this is going to happen. Yeah.
I hope not. I hope not, Mike. Well, look, I better let you get back down there on the shop floor.
Yeah.
I appreciate hearing that.
Always a pleasure.
I want to hear what's going on in Kazakhstan when you get those, get that drilling going. I think that'll be super exciting.
Yeah, I think we'll be very excited to talk again at that point.